Hello everyone, it's Helen at Journaling Planet, and today I'm going to be working in my seasonal scrapbook in the autumn section, and specifically I'm going to be creating a spread that's inspired by Halloween or spookiness. I have quite a few materials gathered for this spread, and that orange and black paper there is something that I actually made on my gel plate. I do use my gel plate sort of periodically to make collage papers, and I have to say they are amongst my favourite collage papers. They always have a slightly different texture to them than the things that I just paint. I guess it has a lot to do with the way in which you roll the paint over the gel plate and the pressure that's applied when you put the paper down. But I always just find that there's some really interesting marks made, and it's lovely to feel like I've made something really individual and that sort of speaks to who I am as an artist. You can probably see what kind of palette I'm working with here. Oranges, greens, blacks. Trying to get that kind of spooky edge to the palette so that it immediately speaks to Halloween without even having to go overboard on the embellishments that I put down. Although I must admit, I probably did go a bit overboard with the embellishments that I put down, but that's half the fun of making something like this. For those of you who've not seen a seasonal scrapbook layout before, this year I am just putting down essentially the basic spreads. And next year I plan to add layers to these spreads and sort of scrapbook more things into them that happen around Halloween. I suspect I will probably put some finishing touches to these layouts in November when I do my flip through. And probably I will scrapbook some things into the spreads then. For now though, I'm concentrated on just getting a really inspiring base down that kind of speaks to the theme that I'm working with, be that autumn generally or Halloween specifically in this case. And I'm really having a lot of fun with this seasonal scrapbook, and I'm using up so much paper that has been lying around for a very long time. Anyone wondering where I got that mushroom, so kind of gold mushroom paper on the black? I got it from a stationery shop in London called Choosing Keeping, and it's a whole book of mushroom paper. I imagine that it is available online, and I shall certainly try to link to it below if that's the case. I know mushrooms are a very big motif for those of us who work in collage. We're sort of a little bit obsessed with them, and they do look very cute when you're putting together a spread, it has to be said. Something about this spread that was slightly different to the other ones I've done in this scrapbook is that I didn't cover the entire page with paper. I did leave some blank spaces. This was partially because I actually thought I didn't really know if I had enough paper that was Halloween themed to cover it all, and that I would think of other ways to cover up the lined paper, such as stamping or stenciling. And the other thing was that I thought it would be good for me to do something a bit varied rather than just cover every single double spread with paper completely and rely on that as a kind of staple that I do. I just thought, no, I'll branch out a little bit, I'll leave some gaps, and then I'll challenge myself to see how I might fill them in. I very much enjoyed drawing this spider web on black paper with a white pen. I feel like that's something that I have not done since I was a child, and I have to say it is so much fun going back to things that you used to do creatively as a child, and it does make a really cute addition to this spread. I tried something here that didn't really work out. I kept it in the video because I want you to see that sometimes things just don't work out, and it's okay. You can try them, you can audition them in various places, and then you can decide, actually, no, I'm not going to go with that. So I drew this little gravestone, and I did it initially in a marker pen, and that marker pen just wasn't vivid enough. So then I decided to go over it in my acrylic marker, and ultimately it looked fine. But I found that when I put it on the spread, when I kind of cut around it and put it on the spread, I just didn't really feel that it had a place to sit. And it looked a little bit different and sort of out of place to the other things that were in the spread. I'm just using this kind of dark academia stamp on this newspaper here. If you've never used ink stamps on newspaper, I do actually recommend it. It looks fantastic, and I have a whole video about how you can use newspaper instead of buying these really fancy cut and collage books. I think that you end up with a pretty similar kind of effect if you just stamp onto newspaper and then fussy cut around whatever stampings you've done. And it also is a good excuse to use your ink stamps, because a lot of us, we get these ink stamps and we'll use them once or twice and they sort of sit in a drawer or sit in a tray, and maybe we use one or two a lot and then the rest not so much. And I'm really trying to get better at using the full range of my ink stamps and looking for opportunities to do that. Here I'm doing a stencil with a kind of strange kind of third eye motif, and I got this stencil from Carrie Gibson Art, and she's a fantastic YouTuber if you've never watched her videos. And I love this stencil. It's probably one of my favorite stencils, and she makes them. She's so clever. And I just thought, with the eye in the middle and this kind of slightly mystical motif going around, it would make a perfect addition to this spread. So I used black ink to fill in all the gaps where there were sort of bits between the paper. And I feel like this is the point at which the spread really started to come together, once I had a sort of link between each piece of paper. Still some work to do in terms of pulling it together, but I felt like this was very much the first step. And here I am thinking, well, I've got two kind of arched elements here. Where can I put them? I'm putting that one up there with the newspaper, and actually I don't really think that the one that I drew works. So I decided instead to put some skeleton stickers down. These were from a sticker book, which I will link to below. And I think that they ultimately worked better than putting two arched elements on the spread. For whatever reason, usually symmetry would work for me. This time, I just, for whatever reason, just felt too samey, and so I decided against it. But I do like the skeleton stickers, and I like how they sort of have this kind of vague Jason and the Argonauts feel to them. And I like how they blend with the other colours on the page. And this is where I started to think I'm going to add more skeletons to my spread. There was a whole page of these skeleton stickers in this book that I used, and I've sort of been saving them for a Halloween spread, just like this one. Then decided that I would stamp a pumpkin, again trying to use more of my stamps rather than just using the same ones. And the same goes for my stencils, trying to use stamps, widely. I've spent money on them and I want to enjoy them. So trying to use as many different stamps and stencils as I can without it looking like a strange overload, of course. You don't want to go too crazy with it, but as much as possible, just branching out from my comfortable space, from the things that I always use. This is a brand new set that I'm fairly sure I acquired on Amazon. And it's all like labels with poison, different poisons on them, which I thought would be fun for Halloween. And so I stamp a couple of these onto tissue paper and I cut around them with my pinking shears to make embellishments. And I do that in the colours that I've already got down, so orange and green, to make sure that it's kind of sympathetic to the spread I've already created. And I did really like how these turned out. I think my ink pad might be running a little bit low on ink, and I need to either buy a new one or get a refill to refill that and make it vivid again, because it is a bit of more of an arduous task to do stamping. If your ink pad is running low, it's somehow a lot less fun when you have to put so much effort into getting the print right. But I did love how that dragon blood embellishment looked, and at the end I do a full close-up of this spread so you can really see all the texture in it. And when I did that close-up shot of the spread, I was pleasantly surprised by how great all the texture looked. There's a couple of other things that I do before I finish up with this, and when I pulled it all together, I could see that I had layered to an extent that it looked really interesting, really varied, really textured. And that's often what I'm going for in my collages. It's not necessarily about them looking pretty per se, it's about them looking interesting. And that's definitely something that I've leaned more into the more I've done collage. I think when I started out, it was definitely about it being pretty. And now it's like, rather than pretty, I'm gunning for interesting. So it may not be the most beautiful thing you've ever seen, but if it sparks interest, that's what I'm going for. At this point in the proceedings, I started to think about any final touches I could make, and I decided I did want a gravestone of some nature, but not one that I had drawn, so I used another sticker. And then I have these kind of texture stickers, and I thought they would look cool, like they would look like slime or maybe ooze. And so I stamped those in different colours around the piece, and just wanted to add that kind of slimy, kind of Halloween, kind of grungy look to it. So I went around with some green ink, and I have to say that ink pad was on its last legs. This is the final time that I'll be able to use that green ink pad. I don't know what it is about the cheap ink pads, but eventually they do just disintegrate on you. They let you they let you stamp for, a few times, and they go, no, that's it, lady. That's all I was designed to do. Just a few times. Sorry. Take your business elsewhere. Here's my sort of slight trademark, which is going around with some torn masking tape and adding some texture where there is currently a straight line. I don't like straight lines in my collages, so I try and find ways of muting them. I did contemplate going in with some acrylic, some black acrylic, and I'm not ruling that out as a finishing touch. When I come to do the final flip through, I may well go in with some black acrylic and just add some more texture and mute some things down where there are straight edges. But for the purposes of this video, I just decided to keep things simple. I love to write really messily over the masking tape, like it's notes or something that somebody has taken. And you can't really read the words, although I am writing some words. I try and just write on the theme that I'm doing. So this one I wrote about witches because it's a Halloween spread. So I just try and write about the topic, but I just write absolute nonsense, like beware of the witch because she will find you in the forest, like just stuff like that. It's totally silly, but obviously gives me something to write when I'm doing this kind of fake writing. So by the time I'd put the writing on that, I was really happy with it. I experimented with going around one of the stickers in black ink, and you know what? I just got to the point where I was like, I don't think that's just adding enough to justify the time in going around every single sticker. When I look at it again, I might feel differently, but that's where I was at with that. So the last finishing touch, which I often do, is going around with acrylic white pen and adding dots to all the dark spaces. I don't know why I love this so much, but it just to me always adds a lovely finishing touch to a piece. What do you think about this piece? I'd love to hear about it in the comments. And if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, I'd appreciate you doing that too. It really helps other people find the channel, the more people subscribe and like. So I'd appreciate that. And let me know if you've got any spooky spreads planned in your journal to kind of focus in on Halloween and the time that you've spent with loved ones, or perhaps in solitude, reflecting on the winter season to come. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. There'll be another video along soon. Until then, happy crafting, and I'll see you next time.